Nice to see you. Just click the go live button. Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We're live now, just to let you know.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I have someone at my door.
All right. I can talk while you're answering the door. So it's Terron. Finally, he and I are back together on a stream talking about stuff. And it's delightful to have him again. We've both been doing our own thing, and I guess there's been a few developments since the last time we were on the stream together, which was a few months ago. So it's great to have Tehran back, and it will be good to catch up on each other's political activism, if any. I have been talking to various people. Today I've been on Joel Davis's Telegram group. I got kicked out of that particular comment thread. I don't know if it's still the same for any post on Joel Davis. Let me see if I can access his other threads, or if it's all out of bounds for me now. I fear it looks that this is the case. I guess I've challenged them a bit too much and they don't like it. Obviously I've been talking about secular Quranism and they can't find an answer to it, and that's why they kicked me out. So I can't comment on any of the posts of Joel Davis, although I can still access them, but not respond to them or interact with them, interact with anybody about them, which is a shame. I was provoking a bit of a storm, and obviously they can't answer my question about how is any idea by any other person better than my idea? And all they can do is talk about how much they dislike a particular group and how they would like that group removed along with the other groups that they dislike. And it wasn't at all an intellectual discussion. And it was ironic, considering that the thread was about how to be more intellectual in nationalist circles. And I was trying to explain to them that the only way you can really be intellectual is to, discuss ideas in a rational and honest way without, descending into threats and insults and, forbidden words of racial abuse. And I don't think it can be managed with those people, that they just can't help themselves, So with people like that, it's just better not to even try. And the interesting thing about hi Tehran.
Hello. Sorry for the wait. I had a few things going at the time. I had to answer the door.
That's okay. I managed to kind of work out what I was going to say, which I can say again, but better.
Okay, sorry about flaking on you yesterday. I really fell asleep. I try to do things once I put my kids to sleep, but after that, I'm already tired myself. So,
Yeah, it's easily done. You just close your eyes in the evening, and, and then you wake
I
up a
know,
few hours earlier.
like what the hell happened? So yeah, I actually was listening to some of what we planned to talk about yesterday. Hold on one second. Yeah, so I was listening to your live stream this morning a little bit on what we were going to talk about yesterday. I thought you brought up some really good points. Like one that it seems like maybe with the article, they could be making a mountain out of a molehill, or lack of better words, or just paraphrasing it the way I understood you say it. Um, which you might actually be on to something. If you look at, I mean, just from the article I read, if anybody wants to check it out, it's called Islamogram, Salafism, and Alt-Right Online Subculture. If you really look at it, yes, they might have adopted alt-right um, visual culture tropes or whatever, however they want to call it, but they really haven't done anything worth putting them under the spotlight like this, except for to know more about them. But it seems like they might be trying to frame this like they could be potential terrorists.
Yeah, because you know what they do by saying, you know, this is a potential domestic terrorist or white supremacist, and I was thinking, you know, these people that they call white supremacists, it's like they wouldn't even identify as white supremacists. They say, oh, I'm not a white supremacist, I'm a white advocate or something like that. So actually, if nobody's going to identify as the thing that you've labeled them, then that group doesn't even exist, you know.
Exactly, because a lot of these people, because I'm in these spaces. Well, I'm not on I do have a Telegram account. I'm not necessarily on Telegram, but I am on Discord, and I'm a little bit familiar with what the article is talking about because I seen it myself. I thought it was strange seeing Pepe the Frog, Wojax, Trollface, but an Islamized version. And the people who are putting these things out, these are not white people. You know what I'm saying? I know Africans who are engaged in spreading this kind of information using alt-right tropes. I know Arab Muslims who are engaged in this, Asian Muslims, all type of Muslims. It's really, if anything, a Gen Z thing and not necessarily a racial. And I actually, because, I plan on interviewing the guy or one of the overseers of the article or who helped edit it soon. And one of the things I wanted to ask him, like, why are you singling out Salafis? I think using that term is a bit misleading. When I think of Salafis, I don't think of the people who I see engaging in this propaganda culture war, whatever you want to call it. These people are Shia. These people, some of them are Ibadi. Some of them are Sunni, of course. Some of them have no denomination. Some of them, as the article mentioned, are very fluid in their ideology, and they go from believing in one thing to believing in another. And I think I mentioned to you one guy who I used to associate with. I'm not going to say his name, but he's in this space and he does the same thing. I've seen him go from being a Quranist, where he rejects the Hadith, to being interested in becoming a Shia, to interested in becoming an Ibadi, to interested in going to be a Salafi. I don't know if that's a part of their plan in order to.
No, I mean, I just it's so infuriating. It's like, yeah, if you want to identify, these people as a terrorist group, there has to be a known terrorist organization, right, for you to join and plan your terrorism, But they want to demonize a whole bunch of people who are usually young men who are not happy with the situation, and then they're gonna, they're gonna, ooh, alt right, far right, extreme right, and then and the most scary form of Islam, which is Salafism, and they're gonna combine the two to make it even scarier, and then treat every tweet as some sort of potential terrorist incident. I mean, that seems to be the way they are going now. They hire these dime a dozen, academics who'll be prepared to say anything for a prize, and that's what they do. When they talk about it, I mean, I remember that bit when it said, and these Muslims, if you talk to them, they'll call themselves Muslims, they won't identify as Salafi, so it's like, yeah, if you're Muslim, watch out. If you're in these, age groups, watch out. If you have any, dealings with anybody on the alt-right, which obviously you do, if you're a political activist, you want to talk about politics, you're going to, bump into all kinds of people people online, and that they're going to say, yeah, you're this dangerous group that we have to deal with. I think that is what they're kind of anticipating the next
The next witch hunt.
opposition that they're going to get, because this domestic terrorist thing didn't really happen, and white supremacists, they don't really exist. So the next thing is this sort of Salafi alt-right phantom creature that they're going to be using to identify people like us, I think.
But I wouldn't doubt it at all. And I see a few people getting crossed. I mean, it's almost like the same thing that happened when the ISIS thing kind of started to bubble. A lot of people who might not been associated with them, but were in spaces where certain information was shared, they got caught in the crossfire and all type of horrible things. So I see that possibly happening in the future, because right now these are just kids on gaming services. You know what I'm saying? They're not on Facebook. They can't go on Instagram with this stuff, but they're just relegated to Discord, and it's just a whole bunch of chit chat, if anything. Now I have
Discord is just for I don't go on Discord anymore because there's so many crazy people and and minors. I don't want to talk to them, and the kind of talk that they do is crazier than we have on YouTube, and it is already bad enough on YouTube, But
yeah.
Discord is just so much worse. So you can't really be looking for recruits on Discord. I don't think I don't know, but I mean I'm not interested. I want to talk to grown ups, and Discord is full of crazy people and minors.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. I mean, to be honest, in some of the groups I'm in, I might be the oldest person there. I'm 35. I mean, 34. A lot of the other people there, like 16 to 18. You'd be lucky if you find somebody in their mid 20s. But it is more so a young man's game when it goes into that. So I wonder what plans do they have? And that's one of the questions I was going to ask one of the contributing editors. Like, what is the potential threat that you see from these people? Besides them, you know, using things that might be offensive to others, as far as to create memes or talking about LGBTQ and liberal Muslims and stuff like that. But outside of that, is there anything that you've seen that would lead you to believe these people will go out and commit, violent? A lot of these kids are in uni. They're in school. I just don't see. It's not like it's not the same demographics or people who they were saying were going to join ISIS, people who didn't have anything going. I don't want to say losers of society, but for lack of better words, these people who I associate with on Discord, who are engaged in what the Islamogram article is talking about, these people actually have things going for them, as far as I can see. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic than what was going on 2014 to 2017.
Well, I think the way they've identified these people, it's like it could be anyone really. You could be a bit alt right, and if they want to sweep you up in their scoop, that they can do so, because the terms are so wide, that any expression of dissent from wokeism is potentially the enemy that they describe, because eventually if you're alt right, I think people will work out in the end that nobody in the alt-right can actually produce a moral system that has the intellectual and moral respectability required to advance their cause, and they will eventually look to Islam, and a few people on the alt-right have kind of come to this conclusion, and one of them is myself. So this is logically and necessarily how the opposition to what they have in store for us is going to come from, and I guess trying to head us off at the pass.
Yeah, and I mean, although some people in the alt-right tried to come up with some moral system, go back to Christianity, but that won't work if you really don't believe in it. If you're only going to go back to Christianity because you see in the face of Muslim immigration, people who have a religion that they strongly identify with, you're just going to identify with what maybe your ancestors did, but not with the same sincerity. Yeah, it's not going to work. So you are right that but see, one of the things that has attracted the alt-right to Islam is the fact that they have a moral code. And that's one of the things that you hear in certain, I don't want to call them liberal woke Muslims, but for lack of better words, you hear liberal woke Muslims complaining about how there is a growing number of Muslims, I believe converts and born Muslims as well, who are starting to adopt alt-right manosphere ideologies. And yeah, I see it, but I don't know. It's just a bit confusing how these two are starting to come together. I will give the article that how it's interesting of unlikely allies,
Well,
but I
I mean, it's only because got there already. I think it's only a natural way of. Well, I mean, if you were being honest about what you think is wrong, the thing about immigration, it doesn't just bother white people because in my time I've noticed a lot of non-white people who are also concerned about immigration, and obviously quite a few of them are Muslims, and they might think, well, why is this happening? Why are they doing it to themselves? What's wrong with them? And it's like, oh, but Christianity, it doesn't work. And this is actually something Melanie Phillips, who is Jewish, discovered herself, because she was kind of thinking, what's wrong with these people? Why can't they just, fight it? Because she's actually quite right wing. Um, and then she said, well, I've examined Christianity, and it seems that they just didn't know where to go with it ever since Victorian times, and all they could do was build lots of beautiful cathedrals all over the place, but they didn't really believe in it anymore.
mm,
And that was kind of what she was saying. And that's why, since then there's a kind of, and this was her way of putting it, an immunodeficiency, you know.
mm,
So it's almost as if, whatever stupid, evil, crazy idea is going, they have to catch it. Like,
mm.
you have no immunity from even the common cold. Even after you've just caught it, you'll just catch it again, and you'll get sick, and nobody will fight it, and nobody will, formulate arguments against it. I just find that a lot of men are even afraid to formulate arguments. They'll just sort of, complain and mutter in the corner and hope that their, that they're not disabled from posting on Facebook.
I know what has happened to men over the last 30 to 20 years is amazing. I mean, and
It's
like you just
shameful.
and the suicide rate amongst men have gone up. A lot of men feel like their society has turned their back on them, don't want to get married, complain about the opposite gender, which is actually another thing I've seen on these Discord servers is just the massive amounts of um, anti-women attitudes. I wouldn't say rhetoric because I don't hear them saying anything, but a lot of these spaces on Islamogram, they will not permit women at all. They even have voice recognition. So, basically, I don't know. It's just where men are going is very strange. It's almost like we are becoming more feminized while women are becoming more masculine. Um, you know,
Yeah, and this makes a society, well, less efficient, because really, when you think of it, the most efficient society would be, where there are gender roles, and men do what they're supposed to be good at, women do what they're supposed to be good at, and they marry each other, and they produce offspring within wedlock, and so that they're, because the father is in the home, the father continues whatever tradition that their society has, and there is a kind of social stability. They wouldn't be, changing their mind about everything every generation.
mm.
And that, I think, is what really bothers people. That, they don't know what to do that's right, because whatever was allowed a few years ago is no longer allowed now. And they can't see, what the future holds, except more unwelcome changes that they don't know how to deal with.
Hmm. I do have a question for you. So, how long have you been on? Are you familiar with Chan? How long have you been online? Because I read
4chan.
that, huh?
4chan. I don't go on it. I mean, when I was talking to Church of Entropy, Jen Shaft. I mean, she was into it, she loved it, and I looked at it, and I just couldn't even bear the way it was presented. It looked such a multicolored mess, and it all just seemed to be crazy jokes and memes, and I never got into it. And I think once I decided to post something, and it was immediately, censored. So I thought, well, I'm just not going to bother anymore. And anyway, what is the point of memeing? Because you can't really advance an argument. You either get the joke or you don't. But really, what you need to do is advance argument. So the other side has to answer your argument or answer your question. So I think memeing is a waste of time, and it's like, and sometimes you have to work out what the hell the meme is, and you think, and so what? Even if you work it out,
If it
something like
wasn't
a
for this
frog.
article, I only became familiar with a lot of these memes after reading the article. I didn't know nothing about Troll Face, Wojaks. I knew about Pepe, but a lot of these things, I was seeing them and they were alien to me. So when I would see them on social media, I didn't know how to take it, how to read it, and it just made me disinterested. So I can kind of see how you felt about going on 4chan. Although I heard 4chan is a specific kind of Chan, but there were other ones. I think it first came out in 2003. The Chan, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't know that it has been around since 2003. I found that to be very interesting, that it's been around for almost 20 years. Because they kind of, in the article, track, well, they don't necessarily track, but I was doing my own tracking of the time when a lot of these things started to pop up. If you look at 9/11, 2001, that's when we had the terrorist attack, and it totally changed the way national security went about things and the way the average citizen is monitored. Then you have, and that's 2001, you have Chan that comes about in 2003. And then you fast forward, that bubbles for a while. You fast forward to the ISIS debacle in 2014. And shortly after ISIS rose to prominence, you also have the alt-right rising to prominence. And then around the same time, both of these groups kind of saw their downfall in 2017, 2018. And it seems like now they're trying to reemerge. And actually, the thing about it, and I have to agree with the article on this, you can't deny that there are probably people with ulterior motives, dubious ideas, or whatever from certain extremist organizations on these platforms who are trying to galvanize Muslim children or young Muslim teens or whatever, and maybe other groups of people who feel the same way as them. I do believe that there is that threat out there, but the way the article was spinning it, I do kind of believe that they were making it bigger than what it was. But nonetheless, it's something that we should be aware of. Just so you don't fall into that trap yourself, because I see a lot of Muslims who probably don't recognize what's going on, who are in these spaces, who have taken on some of these memes that are shared that are alt-right like, but Islamized, and they're just probably going along to get along or doing what everybody else is doing. So, I mean, I myself, before reading the article, could have just as well fell into the whole sharing these type of memes and, the Wojaks and Troll Face, but the Islamized version, because it does kind of get some interesting kicks it does kind of, do kind of get some kicks and giggles out of it. But
Yeah, I mean, I like the sort of the Nazi with the Arabic thing because it's so funny. But yes, I think my advice to people is that there will be agent provocateur
of course,
to get you to Fed post. So just even if whatever. The alt-right is the worst. It's like, they just can't help it. They have to say the N word, they have to say the K word, they think, when they feel safe amongst them, each other in their, exclusive Telegram group, they sort of feel they have to say these things in order to, work out who is for them or against them or that kind of thing. And I think, that's, really dumb. And if you're not doing it to advance ideas or, talk about how to advance the argument. You're just wasting time about, just about saying how much you hate these people, whatever.
Mm.
But I think a lot of people can get sucked into it, and because it's their only form of self-expression, it seems, for these not very educated people, and that is how they get their group solidarity.
Yeah, definitely. Did you watch the video I sent along with it, where they had some of the editors talking about the project?
Yes, yes, I did watch some of it, and Jordan Peterson's name was mentioned. I wonder how he feels about it. Jordan Peterson. Just
Oh
imagine
man,
that.
I was watching
Did you
something with
remember that? That they're mentioning his name?
no, I don't remember them mentioning Jordan Peterson's name, but I wouldn't be surprised because he gets tied into these kind of groups all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if they start calling him an Islamist in a few months. Because of his engagement with
Muhammad
Muslim.
Hijab.
And I seen something with Muhammad Hijab. He was on this podcast called Three Muslims, and you can find it on YouTube. But he believes that Jordan Peterson will convert to Islam and he'll do it publicly. But some those Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawah, and all them, I wonder what their mental state is like, because sometimes they say some really off the wall things, and along with their antics, it really makes me wonder about them sometimes. I don't want to sidetrack, but
Yeah, I
if
mean
you,
they're just YouTubers, right? I mean, I think Hijab, maybe had some scholarly credentials, but not Ali Dawah.
oh, definitely not Ali Dawah. I mean, they say he doesn't have a uni, and I'm not going to, if you don't have
Yeah,
a
but
uni
he's
degree.
good at doing what he does. So I mean, he does read books. Did you see me talking to him?
Yeah, I did. And Dawood, my friend, because I talked to Luka Dawood a lot, um, personally, and he's friends with Ali Dawah. And yeah, he told me that he had spoke to you, him and Ali.
Yeah, and it was good to meet him, and I thought I had an okay conversation with Ali Dawah about divorce, and that verse of the Quran about you have to marry somebody first before you can go back to your husband if you didn't really mean to divorce him. It was that one, and I know he got into a bit of flack about his most recent discussion with apostate prophet.
I mean, that was a total disaster. That was a total disaster. Someone of Ali Dawah's stature, at least on these YouTube streets, does not deserve to, or it can do better than engaging in that type of WWE mudslinging, back and forth crap talking. He actually sits with, or he has access to scholars who can really teach him enough to deal with people like Apostate Prophet, who doesn't say anything too profound. You know what I'm saying? And even with some of, because he interviewed Robert Hoyland recently, and I interviewed Robert Hoyland shortly before him. Even then, it's almost like he didn't read Robert Hoyland's work, or he was very selective with Robert Hoyland's work. I mean, that right there, Ali Dawah. I mean, even though a lot of these Muslims are anti non-Muslims who study about Muslim civilization and Islam, if Ali Dawah had read just that book alone, In God's Path, he could have destroyed a lot of a lot of apostate prophets' arguments, because they were. I mean, he actually could have refuted Robert Hoyland himself, who said some incorrect things in that interview. But they much rather. I don't know. It seems like in the UK Dawah scene, they have this thing like they want to own people, they want to school you, they want to try to one up you, but it's not schooling you in a manner where they're educating you, but almost like telling you off. And you hear that in a lot of their rhetoric, like, I'm gonna show you, boy. I'm gonna, and it's like,
It just means being ruder to you than you are to them, and that's winning the argument. I mean, I don't think so.
no, definitely not. And if the backlash Ali Dawah has gotten from Muslims, and well, non-Muslims are just clowning him, but the backlash he's gotten from Muslims who are saying, you really misrepresented the religion. And although you can argue that he's not really a rep, but with his numbers on YouTube, I mean, a lot of people, Muslim and non-Muslim, follow him, and a lot of non-Muslims look to him as this is what UK Muslims are about. He totally dropped the ball in that apostate prophet interview. And if you go on YouTube now, you see all type of mock videos of Ali Dawah and Apostate Prophet with commentaries talking about Ali and treating Muslims as if Ali is the representative of us all, when he's not. He is definitely someone who created this, or he's like the godfather of this YouTube Dawah thing. There were people who came before him, but as far as someone who has risen to prominence, I don't think there's anyone comparable to Ali Dawah. And with that rise to prominence that he's gotten over the last 8 years, a great responsibility comes with that. Unless he's just trying to do it for money. I mean, if it's just a money grab, then he can continue doing what he's doing, and he gets millions of views off of doing what happened on Apostate Prophet's platform last week. So I wonder what a lot of these Dawah guys' intentions are, because they're making a lot of. If you look at their numbers, if their YouTube channels are monetized, they're making good money off of doing what they do. So I just wonder if the sincerity is there. It might have been there early on when they weren't getting paid, but now, I question that.
Who would you regard as an appropriately senior Muslim to represent Islam in the UK?
The UK, the Muslim community really isn't like that, because I can give you someone, but then they're 2/3 of the Muslims in the UK would disagree with me. And then if 2/3 of those Muslims, or if those Muslims came up with somebody who they thought, another 2/3 would disagree. Because there really isn't no central authority in the Muslim community like that. I mean, you can be as sweet as Mufti Mink and you're gonna have detractors. You can be as rough as Sheikh Faisal al-Jamaiqi, and surprisingly, the majority of Muslims might agree with you. So it's hard to say. I think it's more about who you get on and what they decide to talk about. Now, if they try to take the middle of the road in the conversation, you might get more Muslims, the generality of Muslims agreeing or having no problem with him. But if it's somebody who is very polemical, really more about his particular interpretation of the religion and not necessarily just educating people on what Islam in its generality is about, then you might have problems. And see, that's what the majority of Muslims are about today. They're more so about trying to convey their interpretation of Islam instead of calling people to believe in God and be devoted to him and stuff like that. It's more just about their interpretation.
Yeah, and there'll be, it'll be the same kind of thing with Muslims as with Jews, the expression, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. So, then there's no point, because then you can be, any answer to any question can be yes, maybe, or no. So, you'll get all your principles diluted and end up like the Christians, I think, if you allow this to happen, because, the Jews basically have no identity. They don't want to discuss it because they know somebody's going to disagree with them. So, they have no moral clarity. And it's the same position with Christians. And it's a shame, because that's the whole point of having a religion that is based on scripture, because you have words that people can agree on, like the words of the Quran are the words of the Quran, however you interpret it. But if you don't even bother interpreting it or discussing what this or that means in law, then I guess all your other principles will be diluted. And then it'll be no good anymore, sadly. And I think it's a shame that all these Muslims, they come to the West, and they're going to have their identity subsumed by this thing that they don't really agree with, which is against their religion anyway. Globo homo and LGBTQ and wokeism. I mean, it doesn't even, the people here who were born here don't agree with it.
And it makes me wonder if they're targeting these people online in the Discords, the Telegrams, and stuff like that is because they're against these things, not necessarily because of what they're propagating, but what they are against. If you notice, if you read the article Islamogram, that's one of the things that they say these people are distinguishing themselves from. There is no distinct, there's no like, there's nothing about them that is unique except for, or there's nothing about their identity that is unique. And the only way that you can kind of identify who they are is by what they're opposed to, which they call the isms: multiculturalism, Zionism, um, liberalism. Then you got LGBTQ in there as well. And it seems like instead of actually saying, okay, well, this is a set of beliefs that these people have, and this is how we recognize them, they're going by, well, this is what they are against, and that's how we recognize them.
Yeah, we're against the political establishment of the West and their crazy ideas, you
Mm.
know. And the thing is that there's a huge bunch of people. I mean, like in America, the Trump voters, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess they're frightened because the opposition is potentially, well, a majority, and that's why, you know, they want to head everything off at the pass if they can, by you know, pre-labeling people and pre-demonizing them, so that, you know, if you want to be considered you know, safe, you have to toe the line of whatever the mainstream is offering.
Mm. And you know, I found it interesting that you wouldn't want to talk to younger people, because it seems like it's younger people who are putting up the strongest resistance against a lot of this stuff. When I look at people my age, we're almost like split, you know, down the middle as far as if you talk to somebody, they could be with it or they could be against it. But it seems like with the younger crowd, at least in these spaces, they all seem to be against uh, the standard narrative they're trying to push onto everyone. And
Well,
that's
I
actually
don't really object. I suppose, you know, it's like sometimes you don't really know, and then you realise that the person is underage, and okay, I guess I think that, you know, people in their teens, they keep changing their minds anyway. So even
yeah,
if they do
that's the
agree with you, they
downside.
might change their mind, you know, a day later. So I
Yeah.
prefer, you know, people who have, you know, more or less formed their views, or somebody you can argue with, you know, from you know, whatever standpoint they have.
No, you're right about that. That is the downside with dealing with younger people. They might feel one way today, and then the next day, you know, they don't have all the facts. They're lacking information. So the more information, the more they learn, susceptible to changing their mind about something. And I've definitely seen that. I mean, hell, I've changed my mind so much over the last like 10 years. So I can't expect someone way younger than me not to be the same. So in that sense, I understand what you're talking about, but it seems like they are more open, especially with what I screenshotted you this morning, and the fact that just talking to a lot of younger Muslims, they've been more receptive to your idea, even though they didn't agree with how you framed it, but um, the idea itself is something that they don't have a problem with, because you actually in these spaces, I'm starting to see more Muslims who are secular. I had talked to a guy from the UAE a while ago, not that long ago, a couple days ago, and he was telling me like, yeah, he identifies as secular, and there are a lot of Muslims in the Middle East who identify as secular, but that's not what the regime or the ruling the rulers want for the people. He said the rulers will be secular, have secular ideologies, but what they give to the people is a more traditional religious outlook.
A lot of the
He
Gulf state Muslims seem to be complaining that Islam has been liberalized by MBS.
Yeah, you have Muslims complaining. So it's split. I think I would actually probably say there's more Muslims in the Gulf complaining about liberalism, but there are a growing number of Muslims who in the Gulf states who are trying to break away from that traditional understanding. They're calling themselves secular and looking into different aspects of Islam that maybe they haven't before. And stuff like that. So I would agree, like, yeah, people are. But see, this is now. But see, I think what we see is a top-down process happening where I believe the rulers in the Gulf states, from what I've heard, yeah, they've always kind of probably felt the way that MBS or wanted to do what MBS is doing. But what kind of backlash would they get from their society if they try to. So they just keep it to themselves, and they give the masses traditional religion in order to control them. And but what we see with MBS is like, no, we're not going to keep this to ourselves. And I don't agree with MBS. I really don't even know exactly what he's doing. That's in another country, not my concern like that, really. But I think MBS is saying, no, we're going to do this thing top down. We're not just going to have secular ideologies for the elites, but we're going to secularize the whole country, you know. And yeah, they're getting a backlash, but you know, sometimes swinging the pendulum all the way to the other side is what it takes in order to bring balance. You know what I'm saying? Saudi Arabia, the way that it's been for the last 20 years, has probably done more damage to how people view Islam than anything, you know, because people look at Saudi Arabia like that is, you know, that's where Islam arose from. They are the most orthodox Muslims, according to some people. So to see the pendulum slowly swinging the other way, you know, I think it's a good look, good optics for people to see that, you know, Muslims or Islam is a dynamic religion, and that Muslims are not static in the way that they think, and that there's diversity amongst Muslims. Just to even hear Muslims disagree with what he's doing, some of those people being but yeah, I'm not. I don't know where I was going with that part, but yeah, I think we're going to see interesting developments in the Gulf in the next couple decades,
And the
especially
thing
with
is,
it becoming more open.
yes, yes. So obviously change is afoot, but also we have established that the Quran can be interpreted in many different ways. I mean, my favorite example is if each state of the United States could interpret the Quran in its own way, they would have 50 different ways of doing it.
Okay, yeah.
And
There's infinite amount of ways the Quran is interpreted today amongst just in Muslim circles. You know what I'm saying? It's like even though I think if you read the tafsir literature, you would think that the interpretations have been canonized, but no, tafsir is authoritative, and you won't never have you ever read a tafsir calling itself authoritative. And there's plenty of interpretations that and see, I didn't know this when I first became a Muslim. I thought, and actually, I wanted there to be just one narrative.
but it's impossible. I mean, it's like legal precedent. I mean, because the law is a continually developing thing. So although that lawyers now might rely on one particular precedent, it can be overturned. So unless you're actually living in a country that actually runs Sharia, it's all your opinion versus my opinion. But it's only when Sharia is actually imposed and in force, then its developments would be concrete and worth talking about. But unless you do that, it's just one Muslim opinions against the other, and they'll never agree.
Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that they think Islam is like Christianity. And it's like, oh, but can't you see that Islam is failing? Look at all these Muslims who are gay and whatever. And you think, no, you got the wrong idea, because Islam without Sharia is a car without an engine.
Oh, definitely.
And it's not fair for you to say Islam is not working if you take the engine out.
Or you don't try to fix the engine, modify it a bit. I somebody said something to me like they're against reformist thought in Islam, but Islam is Muslims have reformed Islam from the beginning. I mean, just removing it from the Rashidun Caliphate that was located in Medina to turning it into a monarchy now located in Syria is a reformation. And we can go through a long line of things that took place in Islamic history in order to accommodate the changing situation. It's only now that Muslims think we can recreate in the West or in places like the UK and US something that was created in places like Baghdad, Syria, and Medina. But the reason why a lot of these interpretations came about is because of the circumstances and the time in which these people were living. And we're so far away from that time today that it's impossible to kind of recreate that. Yeah, I was finished.
Yeah, the thing is, there are these rules, and it can be adopted in a way that will suit your particular society at your particular time. Because there's nobody who says, oh, you can't interpret it in this way in your country because they're not going to go to war, with you about it. They'll make a few disapproving noises like, well, it's not how we would do it. I think you're wrong because blah blah. But if you adopted it, I mean, what can they do? And if you did it the wrong way, I guess you'll soon pay. And if you did it the right way, you'll be doing better than other countries, and your people will be happier. So, I don't see it as set in stone at all because, what little I know about the law, and I was legally trained, is that it's fluid. It is as changeable as the society and the people who interpret it.
Hmm.
And
And you know what I think is if something like Sharia would penetrate places like the UK, the US, it would produce better results than what you see in the in Muslim countries because of the amount of freedom we have here, intellectual liberty that we have here that is non-existent in many Muslim countries. um, and then we have the prosperity as well. I believe, the West could produce actually a better Sharia than what has ever been produced in Muslim countries if they were to take it on. But
oh, I'm so glad you see that. Because that's so right. I mean, the West is already has an advanced legal system. It already has a tradition of free speech. People are used to being able to express themselves. But
mm,
they're getting more and more scared now. But there's still this idea that in the free West, people can say things that they want to say within reason.
and that's how it was in the early formative years of Muslim society and Islam. I uploaded. Well, I was just talking about the contents of a book, but Joseph Van Ness, a German scholar who passed away at the end of 2021, wrote his magnum opus, a 6-volume work called "Theology and Society in the Second and Third Century of Hijra." History of religious thought in Muslim civilization, something like that. And he focuses pretty much on the first 3 centuries of Islam. And if you look at the amount of diversity, the amount of the differing opinions just within the same city, within the same sect of Muslims, you would be surprised. Whereas today, you don't see that same type of diversity. And I wonder if that is what is one of the reasons why we see a downfall in Muslim thought today, is because you have everybody trying to canonize. You have everybody trying to canonize. You have everybody trying to canonize a certain interpretation or way of thinking.
Well, the history of Islam has been distorted by Muslims themselves. I mean, its principles, because I think you were the one who said, "Oh, the Ottoman Empire said gay marriage was okay," and I'm sure in other countries that they did something weird like that they obviously shouldn't have done, especially with the benefit of hindsight. But I mean, the narrative I'm trying to make known is that I think the American Republic was founded on Islamic principles. But of course, this idea is horrible to a lot of Americans who are, have many centuries of Islamophobia. It's like, how could you say such a thing? It's not true. And I say, but there is a White House Quran, and it's like, oh really? And it belonged to Thomas Jefferson. Oh really? And who drafted the first, what later became the First Amendment. And they can't cope with that, and they say, oh well, he could have had the copy of the Quran but never read it, but we know he did to negotiate with the Barbary pirates. And I'm saying that the American Revolution represents a rejection of Christianity and monarchy. And then the French Revolution, the same. The Russian Revolution, the same. Westerners have been rejecting Christianity for so long, and the penny still hasn't dropped.
Now, what do you mean by the penny still hasn't dropped? Like they're still on, because it seems like it seems like Europeans, especially, have totally disregarded Christianity.
Well, you see, Christianity was something used by the Emperor Constantine. Constantine the Great was the first one to adopt it, right?
Yeah.
And he used it to support the divine right of kings to rule.
Mm.
because he knew that the imperial cult, that of worshipping the emperor that the Romans used to have, was breaking down, because before he came to the throne there was a lot of fighting. There was even a year called the Year of the Five Emperors, with all these five men trying to become the emperor of Rome. But anyway, Constantine prevailed. He adopted a new religion, and that worked for a bit. And obviously, different European kingdoms eventually made that bargain with Rome, saying, well, we see that Rome, being the center of civilization, has its own religion, and that religion must be better than ours because, we're just sort of barbarian kings, really. And so they adopted that, and what happened would be that the Pope would send, one of his own people, the Archbishop, to, help
And
the king
if we could
govern his
pause on that,
kingdom.
if we could pause on that point right there, which is another interesting something to look into, is that people don't always convert to something because they actually believe in it, because of conviction. Sometimes success is a bigger argument than uh, sometimes success is a hell of an argument.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's like people want to follow the most successful people, and they do it by converting to their religion. Lots of Chinese people convert to Christianity. Do they really believe in it? I don't think so. They just think, oh, look at the white man doing so well for himself. He must be doing so well because of his religion, right?
And I believe that is what attracted a lot of people to Islam in the early formative years. Like, look at how they're rolling over this territory. The ruling elite. They're gaining massive amount of money. We got to pay this jizya, which is more than what the Muslims are paying with the zakat. That creates fertile grounds for people to be like, hey, maybe I might just switch my religion. And if you actually look at it, a lot of these people didn't completely ditch what they believed or their ways of life, but they brought them into Islam and kind of Islamized it so much that today we can't recognize the wheat from the chaff. You know what I'm saying? So eventually, yeah, so that I just wanted to bring that up because you talked about Constantine and how other people were seeing how Rome was, how strong it was. They got their own religion, and that was enough too. And that just had me thinking, like, looking into early Muslim history, a lot of, you can argue that a lot of the people who converted to Islam, it wasn't because of conviction, but more for opportunity.
Yeah, convenience, career, marriage opportunities.
There's
People
opportunity.
instantly understand, like, oh, I converted to whatever religion it is to marry my spouse, and
You know how many
because I loved him
white
or her.
Brits I know up here who converted to Islam just to marry some Indian or Asian woman, but then some of them, I don't know if they believe or not, but some of them actually end up believing after a while by just being exposed and talking to people. And it's like, okay, they came in because they just wanted to marry a girl, but later on down the road, they actually believe it. So, different strokes for different folks. God gives it to people in however they'll come to it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just interesting. I think that some Dawagandists, which I actually like that word instead of
Dowagantis,
propagandists,
that's a good one.
Dawagandists, I think that's something else that they haven't really tapped into. They think that by reason, people are just going to convert to Islam, but I don't think that's necessarily the case.
Well, because I think we know that the first converts, the first big group of converts to Islam in Britain were white working class women. Because
Were they?
I believe so. I may have to dig around for a bit, but it has been said anyway that women were the first converts, and obviously it wasn't middle class women. It would be the working class women into whose neighborhoods that the Muslims first migrated to. So women in north of England and places like that, and I think white working class women kind of worked out what it was they wanted, quite early, because, if they knew that the men of their own race and class weren't going to marry them, and if they wanted to become married mothers, they knew that the only option would be, as the wife of a Muslim husband. There have been, quite a few jokes about, white women who wear the hijab in order to attract, a Muslim man, and there would be a kind of cultural exchange, because it's like, for the brown man, there's a certain cachet in getting a white wife,
Oh,
right?
definitely. Yeah,
And for
I
the
just
white
said there's
woman, it's like,
a
yeah, I
social
want to be a
status
married
exchange.
mother.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I did quite a bit of research in minority men who date or marry white women, and you're right, they do see it as, unfortunately, they do see it as a step up.
Yeah.
And so, I
And for
mean,
white women, it's like, I'm finally going to get a man who's not going to go Dutch. He's going to be prepared to pay the bills and think it's his right and his, duty to do it. And who's going to stay around and not divorce me by, I've met white women in mosques who say, that was a bargain that they knew they were entering into, and that was what they wanted.
mm,
Because if you're not that attractive, I mean, as a white woman, you're not going to get much of a look in it these days because people are so superficial. It's a cult of youth and beauty, right?
yeah, but you will in other communities who just look at your white skin and that'll be enough. That's the joke that's been made for a long time with black men. Like, you look at white men who date interracial. I don't believe this, but it's still funny to me. You look at white men who date interracial, it's like they'll get the baddest or the best looking of whoever they go after. But with some of these other races of men, when it comes to dating white men, it's like they pick Miss Piggy, So, uh, but I don't necessarily believe that's true. But I have seen with some people from my background and other backgrounds, like it makes you wonder, like, is the only criteria for you that they're not black or not from your background, you know? So yeah, I know. I think we went off the rails with this one,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but I'm saying also that people don't. I was agreeing with you that people don't necessarily convert to a religion because they believe in it. There are other, maybe stronger reasons, such as, you fall in love with somebody, you want to marry them, and you're prepared to, give up your religion in order to marry them. And it's a biological imperative, which is a very strong pull. Because
mm,
you can talk to racists like, oh, I would never sleep with a woman not my race, but it's like, well, what if she's the only woman in the world
yeah. What if
who's
there's
going to marry
benefit
you?
to it?
What are you
What
going
if
to
it
do
brings
then?
benefit to you?
Yeah. So, and then people will change their minds. In the end, it's whatever we can get. Now, of course, every woman wants to marry a prince, and every man wants to, be, Helen of Troy, and somewhere we have to settle for whoever will put up with us, and we don't know.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I think religion is about marriage, and I think Islam would actually make gender relations not so fraught, not so painful, and not so disappointing. And, well, I think a lot of people are angry. They've been disappointed in love, they've had, divorces and,
Well, I don't know
inconvenience.
about you, but what I was sold coming up and what I see going on today is two different things. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like they sold you the lie at a young age. You went along with it, and it didn't turn out the way that you expected it. A lot of people who went to uni, they were told that go to uni, you're going to be successful. Well, I come across a lot of people who've gone to uni and have esteemed degrees, but aren't really where they want to be at, or they are where they want to be at, but the massive amount of debt that it took to get there is weighing them down. So I think that a lot of people are starting to reflect and reanalyze uh, some of the preconceived notions that they held, or some of the things that they were told coming up, and how it really didn't benefit them. Like, especially, I come across a lot more people rejecting the advice of their parents, saying that my parents really didn't give me good advice.
But the thing is, the rules are changing even as we talk. You buy a car, they told you to get this car because it's, green, and then they say, no, it's a wrong green one, you got to buy a different one. Or you're going to be facing, emission charges or whatever. So, and it's happened too many times because the government says, you do this and things will be good for you. And they say, no, sorry, things have changed. You have to do things a different way. And, I guess it's a bit like the boy who cried wolf once too often. And people no longer believe what they are told. And this is actually quite dangerous for the government because it loses, its authority, the confidence that the people ought to have in it, and it will make their lives more difficult difficult, and the reason why people no longer trust the government is all those broken promises and the unpredictability of life. And I think basically, whatever our state of beliefs, we just want things to be reasonably predictable. So if we do something, we should get the thing that we did it for. Such as, a reasonable degree of stability if we manage to get married, and reasonably good schools, and not things changing around all the time and driving us crazy.
Yeah, I feel like life is moving way too fast for a lot of people. And just as you mentioned, things are changing right now. Talking to someone who has a degree in computer science, they were telling me that 10 years ago, this degree was worth something, but in the next 5 years or within the next decade, it won't be, with Android or AI technology becoming what it is. And a lot of people are finding it hard to hang on. Whereas somebody like my father, he's worked at the same job for 45 years. If my mom's job didn't switch and move to Houston, she still could have been working with them, and that would have been a place she's been at for 40 years. Whereas people in my situation or my age, it's like, man, every couple of years we're switching jobs. It's not even switching jobs for better pay, but just floating around.
Yeah, the gig economy, and so people don't feel confident enough to marry, so they don't. And then, you'll have all these children brought up in single parent families, and then they'll have all kinds of issues, right? And then
Yeah.
things will just get worse from generation to generation. And you tell the ruling classes, and they don't care, they don't get it. And so when we think about what will solve our problems, it's actually for the rules to stay the same, and not be changed for no good reason at all. And this pushes people into thinking that, maybe a theocracy is not so bad after all.
No, I actually think again, talking about the pendulum swinging the other way. I mean, we have lost so much faith in within this century. You know what I'm saying? And things have been like hyper capitalistic. I'm not against capitalism. I'm for making money. You need it. But people have become so materialistic that, I do believe that there's going to be a need for something that really soothes the soul in the future. You got the metaverse getting big soon. Probably virtual reality will be competing with reality. And, people are going to need something that has them feeling some type of human, in tune with themselves, not just all this type of technology connected to your laptop, connected to your phone, you know,
Being manipulated by the people who
being
wish
being
to.
being manipulated.
Yeah, and the thing is,
And actually, to talk about changing rules, I mean, just the way that COVID has been handled. A lot of the people I've talked to have said, "Hey, I've caught COVID, and it didn't seem any different than a common cold." But the rules have been totally changed in order to accommodate the various strands of COVID. That we didn't do none of this when it came to swine flu, Ebola, aggressive common colds, influenza. None of this stuff did we do what we're doing today, which is totally. And a lot of people have lost faith in the system. Like even just flying to the next country. I have a coworker from Spain. How many times her plans have been delayed because when it comes close to her flying out, she tests positive for COVID, and now she can't. She bought a ticket, she can't go. I know that with a lot of people. So people have lost faith in how things operate. They don't seem to operate as efficiently as we thought, and the rules are constantly changing. Just me and my boss the other day, because I had COVID a couple weeks ago. My boss didn't know, is it a 7-day isolation? Once you catch COVID, then you can return to work, or is it a 10-day? And me and him both were. I was sick, of course. He was at work. Both of us were looking online, the NHS, to see nobody really knows. Because things are constantly changing, and it's creating a ball of confusion for a lot of people, because people want some type of stability.
yeah,
You know,
and if we were already a theocracy, we wouldn't have allowed all this to get in the way of so many things, and we would have been philosophical about it. That a few of us are going to go earlier than anticipated, but we're not going to crash the economy because of a cold.
Yeah.
That might kill what? Okay, maybe well, it has a 5% mortality rate, and it's like, well, China can do whatever it wants because China's China and we're here, and maybe not everybody is able to work here the way they are in China.
Mm.
Because a lot of people are quite old, a lot of people don't even have a job and are never going to get one. And maybe if they went, away, nobody would miss them that much,
What was it? Soylent Green? Was that Soylent Green where they started just making cookies out of all the old people in order to kind of keep
Yeah.
society a certain standard? You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's another movie called Logan's Run where you can't get beyond your 30th birthday because then you'd be too wise and you might question, the order or something. So, yeah. So really, the thing is, I think the female preference is always being prioritized because I think the lockdown restrictions, it bothers men more because men are the ones who have to go out and bring home the bacon and do all kinds of things, and women don't seem to mind because they're mostly in the home, so they're not so inconvenienced by it. And that I think is where you get the preponderance, and obviously if you're old, you want to be more careful, but the old should not present themselves as a burden of debt on future generations, particularly when they've enjoyed a better lifestyle, a more stable governments, and subsequent generations. So all these sacrifices are could be seen as not necessary, and may be resented by future generations.
Oh, I definitely believe it will because it has totally, for kids growing up in this time, going to high school, uni, even before high school, yeah, it's totally changed the way that they're not happy about this type of stuff. And a lot of what you were saying really sounds like you're talking about boomers who even though I don't like going on about these type of things, but I hear people talking about it, how boomers, as you mentioned, enjoyed a great lifestyle with stable governments, and that's not really the reality that their children are faced with. um
Yeah, I mean, there was this joke that COVID was boomer remover, right?
in a way it was. I mean, unfortunately it kind of was, though. I know a lot of older people. I mean, my wife's grandmother was lost because of COVID complications, and even though she was already sick, and I know that's the argument a lot of people are making, well, these people already have pre-existing conditions. Well, they were living fine with those pre-existing conditions until COVID came and kind of acerbated them. So it's just it's one of those things, and even if it's not some diabolical plot created in Wuhan, you know what I'm saying? These things are natural. It might be a way of the world.
Yeah, I've had a really bad flu, once, and I was weak as a kitten for I think about 2 days, and all I could do was, sleep and go to the bathroom and sleep. That it was that bad. So I guess if I had already had some, bad thing, I mean, it might have finished me off. I can understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's really new because I mean I still remember people saying, oh, there's a bad flu going on. It might affect your tummy. You might get a tummy upset while you have the flu, or something like that. So obviously, virulent strains of the flu have been known to go around. It's just that people didn't make that, such a fuss about it.
I know, but will this COVID thing ever go away? Because it keeps changing from whatever it was last year to Chromacon this year, and then next year is going to be something else. And it makes me wonder, like, is it always going to be with this? Or are we just always going to
Yeah,
live?
like the flu. It's gonna be like the flu. It is the flu, right? I think we're crazy. We're so crazy. And if it gets a few of us, it'll just have to get a few of us.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's not disastrous. And the thing about, it just drives me crazy about Europeans. It's like, well, Europeans, they suffered the Black Death and about 65% of their population died. But, did European civilization die out? Did it? No, it didn't.
no, it probably got better after that. Some people argue that it got rid of a lot of the dead weight. Is argument.
Yes.
along with shipping a whole bunch of Europeans out of Europe in the 1840s to 1920, get rid of the debt. People, it's not I'm not too surprised by that. And actually, when did the Black Plague come about? Was that the 1300s, the 1400s?
Yeah, I think there were about 3 waves of the plague or something, and it came from Central Asia. Yeah, so yeah, it came from China again. Oh no.
And I think they said the Spanish flu came from China as well. But yeah, so what if that was the 1300s, the 1400s, the 1500s was when Western European countries started to rise to power. You know what I'm saying? So that might be. I haven't did any type of reading on it, but I'm sure someone can make the argument that the Europeans' rise to power in the 1500s or the 14th century could be linked to the 12th, 13th century uh, plague that had happened. It didn't affect. I know it affected Asia, but not to the same extent as Europe. But yeah. So I mean, I said after this too, because after the Spanish flu, they had the Roaring Twenties, where everything was very exciting. I was hoping that we would have like another Roaring Twenties after the COVID, but don't look like this is going to be going away anytime soon. But still a possibility. So I think that there's light. I try to remain optimistic. I think that there is light at the end of the tunnel with this. Maybe we'll learn something from this, and we can better face the future next time. But yeah, right now everything is kind of in a mess. Things are not very certain, not
Yeah.
very stable right now.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the plague, that there was a very interesting way of viewing how things, if you did get the plague, and this is from a Muslim doctor, and he was saying, well, you could regard it as punishment for sin, so that's why you had the plague, but if you've been a good person, and you still get the plague, then you can regard it as God, hurrying you to come to Him quicker. So look at it whichever way you like.
I've heard something similar to that, but I think the last part, the person added that you got it, you think you're innocent, or you got it and you think you're innocent, but really, when all of this debauchery and reprobate actions were going on, you didn't say anything, so you're getting it just like the rest of people.
Yes, yes.
you know so which that kind of makes sense to me. Like, if you don't it makes more sense than innocent people catching it. Hey, you saw all this stuff going on, you didn't stop it, and now you're gonna get it like the rest. I think that was kind of like what happened with Lot's wife, ain't it? She didn't necessarily engage in the actions of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, but because she didn't feel any type of way about it, or she actually
She looked back.
yeah, she looked back.
The thing is, it's like, but it could happen to me because I wouldn't be able to resist looking back. I mean, a lot of people like go.
But you know what though? I've heard interpretations that looking back, and I actually think it was Sam Gerrans who gave this interpretation. That looking back didn't necessarily mean that but she had instead of going with God's plan, she was attached to her material things that she was leaving behind. And so her looking back is looking back in doubt, is looking back in doubt, like maybe she should go back because all of her stuff is there. And I don't know how he came to that conclusion, but I thought that was a very interesting interpretation, that she was looking back because she doesn't want to leave all this stuff. She doesn't know where she's going with Lot. So instead of having complete faith, she looked back and thought about going back, and God turned into a pillar of salt.
But I thought it was part of the story of curiosity killed the cat. It's like, told you not to look back, and I think that the story of is it Theseus, or I forget, Orpheus, sorry, he was this musician, and he had to go down to the underworld to collect his dead wife, because he was heartbroken after she was dead, and he wanted to bring her back, and he was told, yes, you you lead her out of the underworld, but you can't look back. And he did, and so he died in the end, and he didn't succeed in his quest. And the story of Adam and Eve, same thing. Told you not to eat from the tree of life and knowledge, and what did they have to do? They had to eat what. Yeah, and Pandora's box, another thing, people just not being able to stop themselves.
Yeah. On the Adam and Eve story, I heard one interpretation from a Muslim scholar. I don't know if it was rooted in any type of hadith or something like that, but I guess when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, what it was is that they learned how to use the bathroom. And in paradise, there's no using the bathroom, so God had to kick them out.
Yes, and they suddenly realise. Yes, that's quite a neat story about they ate from the tree of knowledge, and then they suddenly realised the feeling of guilt, and then they went around looking for the fig leaves because they were ashamed.
Oh. So that's very interesting. I always wonder about the Adam and Eve story, because one thing that I read is that you really can't get the creation how a lot of religious folk understand creation, from at least from the Quranic narrative. You don't get how man was actually came about. You have very sparse stories or descriptions of how God created man and the story of Adam, but it's not like a flowing narrative to where you can say, okay, this is how man came to be. Because I always ask a lot of religious folks, well, how do you think things got here? Do you think that one day there wasn't an elephant, and then the next day, poof, elephant just was walking around the jungle? Or were there certain developments, almost like the stages we go through in our mother's womb to get here, which even just outside of so it makes me wonder about the Adam and Eve story, since you mentioned it. But
It's more a sort of gender relations thing, because it's like, oh, Eve, you made him do it. If it weren't for you, Adam would have been happy, not doing anything much.
oh man, how many men blame their wives for that, for
Yes.
their unhappiness, the situation they're in? uh,
Yeah, but
but
the
yeah,
thing is, it's like, you take on a woman, you have to take on all her desires, and it might be a good thing, or she could be the ruination of you, but, the fact that she's going to, be an extra mouth to feed, and she's going to want all kinds of stuff, well, it could be good, because of her, you might become more successful, than if you were just, on your own, just looking after yourself.
oh, definitely. I do believe that women are a huge motivator for men. They can either make or break you. Definitely motivate you to do the wrong things or motivate you to do the right things.
Yes. And the thing was that, it's all a kind of, can't live with them, can't live without them,
Oh,
thing.
definitely, definitely,
And,
definitely.
and I guess men and women don't really like each other, or very rarely do, because they don't see the world through the same lens, and they feel differently about so many different things. But they still have to marry, or the state will make them marry each other, because the state wants to, to keep, its citizens, well, to produce enough people to keep the nation in existence. And therefore it should support marriage, but it doesn't. And I think that's a sign of kind of something wrong there, that our countries, our governments don't seem to want to want us to
But a lot of us don't want. I come across a lot of guys who say they don't want to marry, they don't want to have kids. They're don't want. I even see a lot of women now. I have a buddy whose sister has a YouTube channel. She's always on there talking about how she doesn't want a kid. She's happy, and
I used to be like that. I'm sure you used to be like that.
yeah, no,
I mean,
I
well, I can't see the point, until I don't know.
once upon a time, I definitely was saying I don't see the point of marriage if 50% of them were ending in divorce. But as you mentioned, a lot of it's better to live with them than without them, at least from my perspective. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. When I was by myself, just at my auntie's house, like, oh man, I really wish I had somebody. And then nowadays, Shit, just yesterday, wish I'd had nobody, you know.
But I think it's the same for everyone. It's like, why did I do this? Wasn't I happier before? But if you look at the lives of single people, they're quite sad little lives, aren't they? I mean, they have just a little bit of everything, and they don't want too much change, and then you can see that a society of people like that are just not going to try very hard about anything.
Mm.
It's like, I just want my pension to be enough and I'll be happy, and that's it. I don't want any more.
But then that's never enough, you know. And I do think like family is important, you know. Just the comfort I get from speaking to my mother, looking at my children, stuff like that. Like it makes a poor man rich, you know,
Yeah.
having family, you
Because you
know.
have hope for the future, that hey, the children might be okay, they might be
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, definitely. But I do hope things change. But I seriously believe that the pendulum is going to swing in the opposite direction. We are engaged in a culture war, no doubt. And I'm interested in seeing who's going to come out the victor. There's actually a lot of battles in this culture war too, like gender battles, multicultural. You know, so I wonder what type of conclusion or what the end result is going to be through all of this. Um,
Well, I think really, it's touch and go, because I think the forces are evenly balanced, which is why it's so scary and precarious now. But I think arguments can be made for all the changes we want to see, because it's only because our parents got married and bothered to sexually reproduce that we are here. And why are so many people saying that we can't be bothered, we don't want to pass this on because we can't be bothered, because we're scared and we don't like members of the opposite sex. So
mm.
something must have gone wrong, and I think what has gone wrong is that if you have too much sex with too many people of the opposite sex, you're just gonna not care about them anymore. You won't be able
Oh,
to
of course.
bond with them, and so that is a problem of promiscuity and a culture of casual sex.
Oh yeah, they've done study on this. The amount of partners you have make it harder for you to, and personally, just as somebody who's been married once, uh, you know, it is kind of hard to shake your past relationships, and then you are always making a comparison with this one and that one, and it does kind of make you unhappy sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, this one, even though the other one might have ended in total disaster, you know, just taking a piece of what you guys used to experience. It's like, man, I don't have this with that person. And I can see with some people, depending on how many partners you had, it definitely plays on your mind. Like, or maybe you feel like you can get better because you've had so many in the past. Like, okay, this is just a dime a dozen. I can go find someone else. You know, you don't have that same. Then I think a lot of other things kind of have changed as well, such as the amount of access of people that you have nowadays compared to, say, 50 years ago. You know, like you can go online and see so many different people. You can go
Yeah,
on
I mean,
Instagram.
I saw a guy's Tinder app. He showed me the women he had access to, and they were scary. The women were scary to me. I mean, I don't know him. I don't know.
And so, you know, that creates a ball of confusion. Whereas, like back in the day, you marry somebody, well, who am I gonna get that's better? You know, there's only there ain't too many girls in this town. Might as well just hold on to what I got. But now it's like, man, you can get on a plane, boat, you can go Tinder, swipe left, go on social media, look at pictures. The way pornography is just so available on and I think that also has done something to gender relations that I don't think has been tapped into as much. You know, the availability of pornography.
Means that we will always be unsatisfied. I think that is the whole purpose of pornography, is to keep us unsatisfied, right?
I definitely, because then your expectations. I mean, for one, it raises your expectations of sex. You know, you're not thinking that like this is basically Hollywood version of sex, just like Hollywood with everything. They make it bigger than what it is, bigger and better than what it is. And you know, I think people, yeah, going, and especially if that's the only thing that you've been watching, that's your first introduction to sexual relations, and then you get married and you find your woman isn't exactly like what you've been watching your whole teen life. Um, it can become very disappointing.
Yes. So I think we need to understand, in a way, that we can't, have this fantasy thing. It's not a fairy story. Well, our lives are not a rom-com where, and if we pretend that we still are in this fairy tale kingdom, well, we're just going to get our fingers burnt and our lives destroyed, and always be unsatisfied. And maybe we should just, think of thinking and living in a different way, which, is not so bad when we think of the stability that our, parents and grandparents used to have. That they may not have had enough, as much opportunity for, different kinds of sex as we have, but, maybe they were just dissatisfied. Maybe they didn't feel so crazy. Maybe they don't have addiction problems or all kinds of things. Because I think really, it's like a multiple choice test, isn't it? I mean, you have A to D, and okay, you do 20 questions, and you think, well, maybe I have a decent chance of passing. But if every question is A to Z, and you do 20 questions like that, you go crazy because you think I mustn't answer the wrong question, and that is the source of our I think a lot of our mental illness and disappointment and anger. And that we must have made the wrong choice because there was too much
You
to
know,
choose from.
I am interested in what do you think, even though I probably won't have time today, but we can, because I plan on doing more live streams. Again, I think I mentioned to you before, if I let my children get in the way, I can't do anything. So I'm just gonna have to like roll with the punches. But I am interested in hearing what are your plans? How do you see people combating the situation we're in today? Like how do we transcend what we're all experiencing? Like how do you see us reaching the light at the end of the tunnel, basically? Like,
I think by keeping the channels of communications open, and I think talking to each other, because you're a family man, you have a wife, you have children, you have concerns about their future, and I think talking to each other as concerned citizens is going to be far more helpful than talking on Discord to crazy people. And we're doing it under our real names. We're not anonymous avatars
yeah,
who
exactly.
can say crazy things and not care what we say. And I think doing this as grown ups will be better than any other kind of online activism or meme sharing or anything of that kind.
Mm.
And
Oh, definitely, definitely. I find that to be low level activism. This might be a lower level of activism than actually pounding the pavement or going out in the street. But the time we're living in, I mean, you can do a lot from a device, more so than maybe even going outside. They say that the Arab Spring was organized and fueled all through social media. Had nothing to do with organizing in the streets. So if something like the Arab Spring, which was able to turn over what was going on in some Muslim countries. I know it worked in Tunisia. I think Oman, the Sultan appealed to the people's requests. I know in Egypt it was successful for a bit, but then under certain pressures, they kind of stopped that. But yeah, I think social media is a powerful tool, and actually people like hearing people talk. If you had told me like 10 years ago, people would sit online, listen to people have discussions about whatever, I would have never believed it. But people are actually very much interested in this, and you see the people doing it, they have a certain amount of influence over how people go out and view the world or approach the world. So yeah, I am definitely interested in having more of these, and I would like to have more of these with you. It's just, man, I've been so busy lately. We had a horrible check-in at at the student accommodation I work at. Like I've never, it was a total nightmare. We had people moving in rooms that weren't clean, were damaged, and it's just been crap trying to catch up at work, and then also here at home, have my own problems. Um, I kind of left the instead of doing my interviews I was doing, I really wasn't doing any live streaming or talking to people
your
like that.
live streams were the best with ordinary people, I must say, and
I
and
know,
I'm
man.
so
I'm trying
happy
to
to
get
hear
that
that you're
started
going to be
again.
doing them again.
I'm trying to get that started again, but a lot of the people, like I was on Discord today, like, hey man, would you guys want to live stream? We talk about a lot of stuff, but typing, man, that becomes tedious after a while. We could, but maybe it's just gonna have to start with me and you. Me and Dawood, we're doing a few things, but he gets busy sometimes, and I think a lot because a lot of the stuff needs to get out there.
Yes, and I think the fact that you're American and Muslim and living in the UK is really such important signalers of where the world is going, because you being a family man as well. We'll just sort of normalise what we're trying to say, because otherwise we're just going to be demonised as, I don't know, alt-right or Salafist or whatever, and I think the way politics should go is for ordinary people to say what they want to say in reasonable tone of voice, and rather than just leaving it to the crazy young people. I think
Right.
I think we are needed.
No, definitely. If you don't say something, the wrong people will, and I think that's what's going on right now. And I think, especially in the Muslim community, on the Dawah scene, I think that's what a lot of people are starting to come to. If the right people don't start speaking up, the wrong people have no problem saying whatever they need to say. So,
And being labelled as extremists and tarring the whole group with the same brush.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this conversation. Sorry about yesterday. I had every intention of showing up, but I need to work. My schedule is all over the place. I need to work things out. But I definitely hope to talk with you again, maybe on my platform, because I really want to interview you on secular Quranism. I think it's gained a few. It's in the minds of people. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
thank you for sending me that screenshot. That really
Yeah,
pleased me.
it was a joke, no doubt, but it still just shows you like people are aware of what you, and actually a lot of the Muslims in that Discord group, I've never heard them say anything negative about you. Actually was interested in what you were talking about, especially the Ibn Khalid, but you were turned off by the fact that he wrote his name in Arabic, but he's like one of the most liberal secular Muslims you can meet. Well, I don't want to say he's liberal, but he's definitely is secular, you
Right.
know.
Well, you must reintroduce me to him, and maybe I can, start going back to Discord again. Yeah, that would be great. And, and I think we should all just talk to each other in a, sensible, grown up way.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so thank you very much, Terron. I'm so glad we're speaking again, and I look forward to our further conversations.
Oh yeah. Sometimes I spaz out and I gotta you weren't the only. Hey, I was in an Ibadi group and I had to separate myself from them for a bit too, but I reacquainted myself. I think sometimes maybe I overreact. I'm not the type to try to force people to do what I feel they should do, and I would much rather just leave you be, and then hopefully come back uh, when I have clear thoughts about, or when I have a clear head about things. But yeah, man, thank you for having me on, and I hope to do more with you. We can maybe organize something off of outside of the live stream, and we will meet again. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Terron. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.
Bye.